wanted to say that if you guys think it's party or anything, it's just on the left-hand side. But I just want to start by introducing myself. Some of you might know who I am, and some not. My name's Hassan Benga. I'm 30 years old. I was born in Sierra Leone, came to the UK when I was only small. I was only 2 years old. But lived in Reading for a few years, and then moved over to Bristol. This would have been in, according to my mum anyway, she can't remember what happened last week, let alone back in 1992. I think we came to Bristol in the very late 90s, so looking around 98 sort of time. And we first lived in St Paul's, literally this road just over here behind us, and then moved across over to St Helens by the M32, and then moved over to Bristol. So I've lived in Bristol for now 26 years-ish, because I'm 30 years old now. And I guess some of my experiences coming into Bristol has been amongst from when I can remember, starting to remember, it's been amongst the Sierra Leone community. But I also remember it wasn't just Sierra Leoneans that were here. There was a Nigerian, there was Gambians, people from Ghana as well. So it was a real kind of mixed society, from what I remember anyway. Some of the events and parties that we used to go to, there was a lot of different cultures from different African nations, which was nice. But obviously, as the years go on, those communities themselves start to grow. So the Gambian community, the Ghanaian community, the Sierra Leone community, the Nigerian community start to grow in Bristol. When that sort of happens, they all kind of congregate amongst themselves because there's more of their own type of people. But I've seen that the Sierra Leone community here in Bristol has grown tenfold over the last 20-something years. There's a huge number of us here now. So we want to really kind of express what it was like back in the early 90s. If you guys would really remember, same with the Nigerian perspective as well. So how it's going to run, we don't have too much time. We've got roughly about an hour and 20 minutes. So let's try and keep our conversations and examples and stories quite short, but in much detail as we can. So how it's going to sound, I'm going to ask 4 main questions, okay, to each of you. But then I might interject with some other mini questions in between those kind of main questions. So first of all, I just want you guys to just introduce yourselves, where you're from, what year you came to the UK, but specifically to Bristol as well. So if we start with you, Dr. Ayub.
Yes, sorry,
Sam.
Right, I will find you.
So my name is Dr. Charibu. I'm a consultant community
said, my brother, he said, anywhere you are in the world, he said, take it to be your home. That's what he said to me. And I never knew what he meant by that. So, cut long story short, I was thinking about less than a year after that, that's when the civil war broke out in my country. And there we were stuck here. So the rest is history. So to answer your question, it wasn't rosy at all, and we had to depend on in my cultural language. You have a saying. They said, when you enter a dark house at night, there's no light. They said the person you meet in that house will have to show you where the seat is. So our life was really dependent on the few people we knew. That's how we got a job. We were able to get a temporary job for my wife in the first place while I was a student. And my first job, how to earn a little extra with the allowance I had, was at Slicks, and Stokes from here, the takeaway place.
It's been there so long.
It's been there so long.
Exactly, that long, yeah. Yes, and I don't want to bore you with the interesting story, so we'll leave that for probably another moment. So, but anyway, that's how it was. So, my first daughter from my first marriage, I was able to bring her, and the people who helped me or us to have a school for that daughter. Some of you will see her tomorrow. She's married now in London. She's coming for this Malama occasion. And they were both teaching at Fairfield Secondary School here in Montpellier. So they are the ones who showed us where the school was. I didn't have a clue how this young lady would continue her secondary education. That's how they helped us, you see. So people like Uncle Henry, and our Igbo brother who died, yes. He's one of those we met here. They were the ones who were showing us where we can go, we can have African food, we can do, interesting stories, but we leave that to another moment.
Cool. So, it's one of those things where you touch on about that sense of community. And I guess in that early days, that sense of community was probably more important because there was only so few of you.
Yes.
So that's really interesting. And then obviously from your side, being from Nigeria, coming over to Bristol, by the sounds of things, there were quite a lot of Nigerians already. So for you, what was your early experiences in Bristol? Also, you came from London to Bristol. So
Can I just say one or two sentences about London?
Sure.
Yeah, I came in, I was privileged. I was sent to the UK. I was already a senior registrar in pediatrics in Nigeria. So Nigerian Air Force Medical Service sent me for my subspecialty training in pediatric gastroenterology. So I didn't have to suffer for funding, for accommodation, or having to look for any job. Even though I tried to do some extra job, I had to do, while waiting for my registration, I had to do a waiter's job. That really humbled me. A doctor of 10 years standing, having to do civil service. It was unimaginable. Well, it was good for me. It humbled me. And from that day, I respected anybody, irrespective of what job. What I say, whatever you're doing, make sure you do it so well. Make sure you do it so well. And then I got my registration. It was, things were rosy. I then moved after a year to South Wales to my pediatric practice. And in 1994, I came to the Children's Hospital, Bristol Children's Hospital as a pediatric registrar. I was very fortunate to meet Mr. Resefi who was my contemporary in Nigeria. His mother is English. His father, Oromo tribe from Nigeria. He left, the UK for Nigeria when he was 6 and was taken to the village, not a city in Nigeria, a real raw village. He had to join his uncle to go and to tap palm wine. And all the typical native food that changed Ray entirely. Nigeria flows in his blood. I was in one of the privileged secondary schools in Nigeria, Federal Government College Ori, that produced 18 doctors in one arm of a class, 18 doctors out of 30, and 7 engineers in one arm of a class. Ray was at my rival school, Government College, Ukiri, so we met several times between 1971 and 1973. And then when I got here, behold, Ray was a labor councillor. God bless Ray. Ray championed the cause of the black man in Bristol. All the evil thing Colston did, Ray was at the forefront. I talked to Ray about 3 hours ago, and he wished he was here to say 1 or 2 words. And he has a message for everybody here. Do everything to advance your academic knowledge. Do everything to help all the younger black people here to achieve their goals. Let them learn from your example. Ray set up here, the seed, was the first managing director. He brought people from different ethnic minorities to have a purpose in life. God bless him. When I got here, I didn't need to come and start asking, oh, where do I live? Ray took me to Easton for your Nigerian food. You come to Easton, took me to all the shops. You need this, he took me there. So I was privileged. All the things I needed. Ray said, if I became my best friend in Bristol before he left for Saudi Arabia. He's in Saudi Arabia now. At the Bristol Children, at the Bristol Children's Hospital, I was initially given hospital quarters, and gradually had rented my accommodation, and I had one or two challenges. I had already passed my specialist examination. Prophet John Walker Smith was my mentor. He believed a lot in the Commonwealth. When I joined him at Queen Elizabeth Hospital for Children, he said, to succeed in this country, you need 2 things. Listen carefully. The first one was loyalty, and the second one was competence. Not competence and loyalty. You have to be loyal to your bosses. That's the first thing. You want to go for an interview for a job, your boss will speak to the next man, is my boy. My reference was Tyrell manages patients the way I do. One life. That was my reference. Secretary, European Society of Pediatric Gastroenterology and Nutrition. I did over 170 endoscopies, taking samples from babies as little as 6 months. We were tested. I was his disciple. He was my mentor. So, loyalty and competence. And the third one, have something extra. Have something extra. To be a consultant in this country, you need to have a fellowship. I have 4 fellowships. So when you go for the interview, you put your CV, they look at it. No chance. They can push you away. One last thing, when I was about to get a consultant post, I already got all my fellowships. There was a procedure. I do child protection, I do forensic examination of young girls abused. You go to court for every case. You go to the magistrate court, you go to crown court. So you need to be really competent. I didn't think I had enough experience. Since I already had my CCSE, Certificate of Complete Special Training, I was going to go straight into a consultant job. And you're the boss. So I wanted 6 more months of my post in Bristol. They advertised. The job I was doing, I was told that I was not suitable for the job because I was too qualified. Listen, I was overqualified for the job I was doing. So I wasn't shortlisted. I went to the BMA and the BMA asked them to pay me £80,000 compensation. I said, no, I didn't want the money. I didn't want this to happen to any black man again. And then they had to go through equal opportunity training for anybody going to sit on an interview board and all that. I was happy with that.
That's good. That's good. So, so one of my kind of early experiences of being in Bristol. So I went to school in St Paul's, and there was actually quite an equal divide between black students, Caribbean, and different African nations, as well as English students as well. So we had to actually integrate. We integrated quite well. It was really good to see that in such a young age. So one of the questions I wanted to ask you guys in just a minute after I explained, I guess, on my experiences, is even the area that we live in now, St Paul's, that we're in now, St Paul's has changed drastically over the last, I probably say over the last 10 years, only in recent times. There's a new generation of people that have moved into this area of Bristol since they've developed the city centre. It's what we call new money, people with new money. They're coming in, they're buying all the houses, everything is getting pushed up. And it's called gentrification, as you know. This road that we used to live on here, our first flat was there, they knocked that down probably about 15 years ago, built new flats. Seed Centre was double the size across the road. We sold that, demolished it, built new flats. So as you can see, like, Bristol has changed massively. But you can see the new people that have moved in are also trying to integrate within the communities that were already here, the Caribbean and African communities that were already here. So because the African community was quite small in Bristol when you guys first came, not only you had to integrate with other African nations, how did you guys integrate with the wider Bristol community? Where did you guys go and hang out? What did you guys go and do? I want to know some of the interesting stories. You understand what I mean? Where did you guys go when your wives went around? I'm joking. But you guys had to socialize. You came when you were young, you know. You guys were studying. So I want to know what it was like having to integrate with other, I guess, the other wider Bristol community. There was probably a lot of friction. And, you know, what was your social lives like back then as well? Because it's very different now.
Well, Bristol University, when I came, studied at electrical and engineering department. This is at Woodland Road of the hill. So when I came as a postgraduate overseas student, the first thing they did was to put me in an overseas student house. That one is just next door to, it's 115 Queens Road, that's just next to the Student Union. And that building was just occupied by overseas students.
So they just put you all in one place?
They were all there, 115 Queens Road, right? And that was my residence for 1 year. They put you there for 1 year, and after 1 year, you have to find your own way. But I say, fortunately for me, I was only here as a single man just for 1 year because my wife came before the year. I was only here for 1 year. So socializing, all these overseas students, whether it's Chinese, Malaysian, African, and all that, we try to find places to go. Mostly we start with the Students' Union because when you get there, there's almost everybody's there as a student. But the Student Union closes roughly about maybe 9, 11, and pubs are closing about 11. So that's not very enough. So we actually have to go to the pubs and go clubbing. And most of the clubs that I used to go to on Queens Road, Park Street. There's also pubs up the road like even to Griffin Suspension Bridge, which is not too far from
The Student Union.
the Student Union and my residence. So one of the experiences you get when you go out as a single man, a virile man that is, As you get into a club, a pub, or any place else, you have a bit of a drink, you want a girl. The first thing that happens to you as an African in this country is that your first attraction is to the black women. That's the first attraction. The problem you have there is when you approach the black women, you get shoved off. you get shoved off, especially the black girls and the lighter skinned ones who are more attractive most of the time. We like to look for light skinned girls. You go to them, they push you away. The problem then happens is that when you approach a white girl, they're very accommodating. And then if you begin to dance with the white girls, then the black girls get angry.
What about where did you guys go, I guess, to socialize amongst your own communities?
Well,
Because
yeah.
I'm guessing there was no African community.
They were.
In my time, there were not that many, but someone went to the university, went to Park Street and brought us to St. Paul's.
Okay.
That was my first time coming to St. Paul's. Well, I've actually been here, but probably about 6 months. I haven't actually been to St. Paul's. And I came to St. Paul's, there was, the bank pub, behind the bank pub. You know the bank pub?
No.
Stokes Cross. Stokes Cross.
Yeah.
You know where Peter's Garage was?
Yeah.
On Blackmore Road.
Yeah.
The next building, the back of it, the bank. Yeah. They used to have blues nights there.
Okay.
Blues nights there. So you go in there, you probably fall off the stairs because the lights were never on. But the music was banging. And when you get there, you can be assured that you'll be accompanied by somebody. Okay. That's a guarantee. It could be your grandmother.
So you said it wasn't until like 6 months before you kind of came to St. Paul's that obviously you knew St. Paul's was back then predominantly Afro-Caribbean kind of area. So I want to kind of ask this question to you. How did you go and find your food, hair products, barbershop? Because I went to university down in Cornwall. I started in 2011 and finished 2014. And Cornwall is an English place, seaside town. And I remember in Cornwall, barbershop, Sam's Barber it was called, I remember. And he had 3 chairs. I don't know if I should even go in there. I went in there, my hair was after he finished with it, because he didn't know how to cut Afro hair. And it's a special way to cut Afro hair. It's not the same way of cutting straight hair. So I found that as a struggle, even in 2011. So coming to England, in especially Bristol, where did you go to do all of your African stuff, the food, the hair products, all of that sort of stuff? What was it like?
That was tough. It really was.
The hair product of this man.
Yeah.
There's what you call it now?
Right.
Right.
On Grosvenor Road?
Yeah.
Oh, he was there at the time.
He was there.
Yeah, but for me, in the first few months, in the first year, I didn't go to a black barber. It was always the number one. You never go wrong with that. It's always the number one. Then I always have my hat on because it's a cold country.
Because I guess now we're quite fortunate where in St. Paul's, Eastern, even some of the other places in Bristol, you've got a lot of Turkish barbers. They know how to cut Afro hair. And it's a shame that we don't have any females on the panel because, for them also to get their hair braided or weave, where to get their own hair products is, been quite difficult. And then go back to my story of studying in Cornwall, we had our own African Caribbean society as well because we were quite a very small university. There was only 6,000 students there. But the Afro-Caribbean Society was only about 150 of us. So from 6,000 to 150 black students, it was very small. So we had our own society. And I said to them, I said, where do you guys get your hair cut here? Because a lot of them were from London, Birmingham, Manchester. Where do you get your hair cut in Cornwall? They said, go to the shop here and ask for this man specifically. So I did. And I said, how did you learn how to cut Afro hair? And he said to me, I went to London for a whole month, stayed with some friends, and I trained inside black barbershops. So when I went back to Cornwall, he had all of the black students go to him to cut his hair. He made a lot of money from us, don't get me wrong, because he was the only person in that small town that can cut Afro hair. So we had to try and find our own way. if that makes sense. I remember my mum packing my suitcase full of plantain, seasoning, because you couldn't get like, we had Asda, they didn't have anything, so we had to take everything with us from our big cities, and we're quite fortunate now where we could just walk down the street and there's 10 shops. It must have been very different back in the early 90s and then 2000s coming in.
No, in Easton, we had the Nigerian food there in Easton, and the Berbers in Easton, the Sudanese, the Gambian, Somalian. In fact, the Somalians started coming from 1994. I remember one of my first patients, Abdi, one of the drivers, Somalian, but one of the early guys in Somalia, within 3 years, he started coming into, and the Somalians were either taxi drivers or barbers. If you go to Easton, the last barber's shop on your right here, you have Somalians, Gambians, Ethiopian in there. But I visited over 4 hours ago, and you're left the last barber's shop in you have the Sudanese there. So when it comes to healthcare, that's fine. But for African food, Eastern and there from 1994, you go there and say Marx.
Say Mark's very,
And go into a strange place. Obviously, one of the first things that would you'll be confronted with is where can I get my food stuff, especially the kind of taste that we have been used to. It was extremely difficult at the time before the lot of the Asian. There was only one here in St. Paul's there on what was the name of the road? Ashton Road. So for us, that was one of the biggest challenges, and we didn't have anywhere where we could get our local food stuff. So the first few times we had to go to London to get them. And one of our first experiences of going about looking for your own food stuff was a day when my wife and I were working at Broadbeach, and we came along. This was about 1988 or something like that. Just 2 or 3 Africans speaking their African language, and we were shocked by that. So we had to stop them to find out where they were from, and they were from Ghana. It turned out that they had just come a ship that had anchored at the Avon mouth here. Yes, and with a lot of food stuff, palm oil and things like that. We never knew. So we were fascinated by that. So about 2 days later, they invited us to go and get some the ship. So unfortunately for my wife and I, that particular day, we started off when the weather was good. That was how we were in part of our introduction to the British weather, because you could have 4 seasons in one day. It started off on a bright day, so we're very excited to go and see these new friends that we managed to bump into. So on our way going, by the time we got there in the bus to Avon Mount, quite a distance away, the storm started gathering. By the time we actually got down the bus, from the bus to the boat where it was, God forbid, we could have been dead by today. Honestly, the wind and the rain was so heavy. How can we now go back just a distance away, just a few minutes away for us to reach our destination where these guys are waiting for us? They prepared beautiful African food, so we had to break that storm. We got there completely wet and soaked and everything. So they had to get towels to dry our bodies. Honestly, if my wife was here, she would dramatize the truth of his mother. I'm telling you. Anyway, so we were able to get some palm oil, we were able to get some garlic, and that sustained us for and I found it, yes. So these were some of the challenges that
we really had. I mean, there are so many others, but we don't want to bore you with a lot of those stories because it's the young ones. I believe the lesson really here is that, like I started off, those of you who were who came a bit late, I told them a story about some of the things that happened in our local culture back home. The lesson really is that, or like even how our professor started off with, when you find yourself in a situation where you don't know the future, you must be prepared to learn, to improve yourself, and having to lean on people and try not to mix with unnecessary distractions. Be very focused on what you do and enjoy life or mingle with people who can bring positive things into your life. That's the sort of things. And thank God, God gave me a wife who was very, very homely, and right from the word go, and my children, thank God today, we thank God for that. So
Would you say that I don't even want to class myself as a youngster because I'm not that young anymore.
you're young.
I'm 30, I'm getting old. But for my mum always said to me, you're lucky you can't have this country where you've been smart. Would you say that us younger generations have got it easier than what you guys had?
I wouldn't say we didn't have it easy, and even you now, the younger generation, are not finding it easy. I believe you are even having more challenges because the social media is confusing all of us. It has a lot of advantages, but it's confusing all of us to the extent that I don't know. The other day.
So what would you say as a piece of advice to the young generations? Because when you guys obviously came over to the UK, you weren't as young as some of the youths now, but you still face your challenges. So what would you say is the one piece of advice you give to younger generation who are still having to find that friction?
The one piece of advice I would give to the younger generation is, you see, we some of us grew up in cultures where the relationship between the parent and the child is so strong that you don't want to allow that child to go too far away from you, from that environment. And nowadays, there's hardly anything you can do. Like you, for example, you had to go and study in Congo. But our generation, we fear so much children going farther away from the farther away they go from us, the worry will come. So we tend to kind of nurture them just around us. So it is that connection that we should be careful how to handle. Not to let them don't go away too far, but at the same time.
Is that advice to the older generation or is that advice to the younger generation?
To the younger generation.
Sure? It sounds like
I don't know.
Well, for me, especially with those other who are growing up in this country and having to start from school level, as most of my children did, everything seems so nice and easy. You look as equal, whether you're black, you're white, you're in a primary school education or nursery education, everything just seems on a level. But as you grow older, you begin to notice that there are differences in the way you handle and the way you treat it.
Yeah.
And that affects our children in different ways because they begin to see something that they did not experience when they were younger, but then when they're growing up, it begins to affect them. And then we as parents have to find a way on how we can make them understand. It's one of those things where Dr. Liu said, it's about, first of all, the loyalty and the excellence in trying to do your best and make sure you stick to what the purpose is and make sure you do what the right thing is. Because once you get to that level where like secondary school, just a higher education, you become work, then you begin to realize that, well, hang on, these are the guys I was in school with, these are the guys I was in the same classroom with. Look at where they are, look at where I am, and I've done better than them. But still, we are not equal. I would expect to be either in that position, maybe even higher, but you're not getting that, not for want of trying, not for want of doing better, but that is a frustrating thing for black child. You understand? So how do you deal with that? This is why we talk a lot about racism, about discrimination and all that kind of stuff. Our children who grew up in this country understand. Even we who came, the natural thing to be in Africa is black. But when you come here, you begin to realize, well, am I black? I've never thought of myself as black until I came to this country. You understand what I mean? So then again, it's when you grow up, that's when people begin to remind you that you're black. So for some of our children, that is a kind of a struggle. You might have had to deal with this kind of situation yourself. But that consciousness needs to be educated. Our children have to be educated so they become conscious of who they are, what they are, and how they can deal with situations like that. And for you, that experience, for our children growing up in this country and becoming adults, it's a very
to a new society. So, same with you two here. With, I guess for me, I was always able to integrate with anybody from wherever you're from. Okay, I wasn't scared, and I was never scared of the reaction, that whole response I was going to get from somebody who isn't my skin color. I was never afraid of that. If you accept me, you accept me. If you don't, you don't. You know, it's one of those things. So I guess coming to the UK with the kind of education background that you had, how do people perceive you?
But I'll tell you.
Not too long though.
Yeah.
It's 2 minutes.
When I started at St. Mark's Hospital, so learning my endoscopy, the consultants, when I met, were 7 of us being taught how to do the endoscopy. So man looked at me, he said, which jungle are you from? Mr. Peter Tekla. Or Dr. Peter Tekla. Yes, which jungle are you from? Just a shock to the room. And I reacted very quickly. I said, the jungle I'm from, white men carry black men in their shoulders. Everybody silent. Nobody said anything. He continued teaching. That was the first thing. Second time I was in Wales, so I went to ask them to get some grocery. I was going to my car, 3 little girls, about 8, 9 years old. They came to me. I said, can you show us your tape? I just laughed. And I said, their children, their parents have sent them to come and ask this black man. And the third one was what I went through at Bristol Children's Hospital when I was discriminated against because I was too good, I was too qualified. It happened. And I tell my children, always see yourself, don't deceive yourself. You are Nigerian first.
Yeah.
You carry a British passport. So you are Nigerian first. That's the way you be treated when they see you.
Yeah.
Even me, with all my fellowships and everything, you see me on the road, you see me as a black man. It's when they know who you are, that their attitude and everything. Even in the clinic, I remember 1 or 2 of my patients, when they come to my clinic and say, yes, what happened today? I say, oh, I can't understand what you are saying. Listen, I think I get an interpreter. See, I got 30 minutes for you to get an interpreter. I was my last patient. All of a sudden, you understand what I'm saying.
it's a really important part what you just said there about knowing your culture. When you said to your children, you're Nigerian first, and then you're British afterwards.
Yes.
And for the younger generations, I guess, who were born in the UK, they'll automatically go up. There's been many times I've come across other black people and I've asked them, where are you from? They will say, oh, I'm from Bristol. I said, no, where are you from? Where are you really from? Because we know you're not from Bristol. Your culture and heritage is not Bristolian. You know, there is a past where, you know, you've come here. So I guess, you know, for me, with the younger generation being born into the UK, it is difficult for them to remember where they're from, where they're really from, you know? So I think it's important for the parents, the older generation, to keep installing that culture and that heritage and really get them to understand where we came from. There's been many a time my mom said, son, look at from that in. Look at us today, you know? Because she really wants you to understand the reality of what your parents had to go through, the fight, the hustle, the ups and downs to get to where, you know, wherever your family are today. I think that's really, really important. So I guess I want to ask another question. How do you manage to retain your culture coming into a completely new kind of environment?
Well,
Was that hard or was that easy?
It's a very good question. And I want to answer it in my own way. How, from being a Muslim back home in Africa to becoming Christian and now living in the UK. And that wasn't an easy journey because my name, the names of all my children, is all Muslim. But I soon found out that because I've been so much away from my real people, I started to lose focus in my religion. So that my wife was taking the children to church because she's a Christian. And so the pastor, in his own wisdom, was kind of doing some outreach work, and I was one of his targets. He said, a bright young man, young family, growing up children, and yet faith-wise, they are not cohesive. So how can we do, or what can we do to make them one? And that's how he was able to convince me to change my religion. And I did it willingly. And today I don't regret it. But it's one of those things in life where different environments or wherever you find yourself, you're faced with this sort of challenges. You asked me just a moment ago about challenges that we have. Look, that's the way I have to face that sort of thing. Now, let me now make a very important point about this thing about probably making our youngsters knowing where they come from, or to pursue their being African. My brother Doc was saying Nigeria first. I mean, I took a very bold step many years ago, and today we can all see the benefits of it. You see, in this kind of world that we live in, when we took our children home in 2002, just after the war, one of the first things I found out here is that they could have Sierra Leone nationality, even though they were born here, because their parents are from Sierra Leone. And so we pursued it, and up to today, they all have Sierra Leone passports as well. So the right as a citizen, not only of one country, but of another country, especially where your parents are, is something culturally we have always promoted, and I would want to promote that to anybody, to any family living whether in the United Kingdom, the USA, wherever.
I think it's so important to retain, your culture and your values. So important. I remember, so my girlfriend's English, and I remember there was one time where she came round to my mum's, and I was preparing some food, and then she asked me, "Why are you washing your chicken?" I said, "Oh, here we go." She didn't understand the concept of you have to clean the meat before you cook out. She didn't understand that concept. I just thought, this is going to be a very long road for us, isn't it? We're here now, you understand it. But I think to retain your cultures and your parents' beliefs of where they kind of come from, I think it's really, really important, especially for the younger generation, to never forget that. Because I think as Sierra Leoneans, I feel like we navigate ourselves in a completely different way. I think we've got a bit of a swagger about us that not many people don't know we're Sierra Leoneans until we say we're from Sierra Leone. It's one of those things. And to be honest with you, the jollof rice in Sierra Leone is far better than Nigerian jollof rice.
I'll let you finish.
It is. Remember, you're in a room full of only Olu, I'm guessing you're Nigerian, right? Yeah. But I think it is really important.
Yeah,
So
so the Gambia one as well.
the Gambia, it's getting there. The Gambia one is getting there.
Your Gambia is okra soup.
It's okra soup. Even the same okra soup is far better.
What about the jollof? Not different from.
We're gonna be rounding up soon because we've got a poem to hear from one of the youngsters.
Sorry, just before the 30 seconds. Still part of understanding your culture. I think 4 things are important. If you can speak to your children in your native dialect, I think that's the most important. Don't just use English as your medium of communication at home. As much as possible, use your
native language.
Your native language. 1. 2, the food you eat. Also, Nigerian. Even music. My son, all the top Nigerian music. That was he identified and told me he wants more identity. And the 4th one, take them home regularly. I remember when we were little, when my son was 2, I would just order them, "Oh, we are going to London." We're going to a teenager. Before we see that we don't have friends. Our friends are not in London. It's your friends that are in London. You have to negotiate with them. My dad was a military officer. I was a military officer myself. So we were used to just getting orders. And so you have to negotiate with them. Because of this change in culture, you need to explain, to go the extra mile, explain why they have to do things the wrong way. But it's so important. So when they have the ownership, it becomes very, very easy for you. And they learn from example. Don't get over saying, "No, you haven't gone to church." You go. Then the child keeps going. My daughter is a senior lecturer at Cardiff University. She's seen the targets her parents have set. And there's no way, apple trees have apple fruits. That's it. So we must set a good standard for the children.
I think it's important going back home to where you're from as well. I remember the first time I went was 2004. I think I must have been 11 or something like that. And it was a funny story. One of my cousins decided to chase me with a chicken. I've never seen a live chicken run around. He started to chase me, so I slipped, fell, and I cut my knee open.
Oh.
And I was crying. I said, "Oh." And I said, "Uncle, call the ambulance." And everybody in the house started laughing. They said, "Ambulance now for die man now." But those things you don't realize until you go back to see the reality of the different cultures. Hey, you just call 999 and 10 minutes the ambulance is over there. It's just not gonna happen. So I think that importance of sending them back home to where they're from to understand the cultures and the way they move. Has anybody got any questions or any comments they want to share before we move on to the final poem? Yeah.
Thank you very much. Sorry, I came a bit late, and so I would have missed some of the anecdotes, the stories about life for people who came here first. I know we have maybe 2 or 3 generations of people from Africa here. Those of us who are the first generation that came here, we made a decision to come here and settle here with family and make this our second home. If I was a youth now, what I would ask my parents would be, if things are so bad, because when I came, I met anecdotes about the challenges people face here, Black people face here, and how we try to cope. And no matter how much you try, there's always that discussion between you and them. So I would ask, well, if it's so bad, then why don't you go back home and raise a family there? So I wonder what the panelists would say to people who, children who will ask, even if they don't vocalize it, but perhaps they're thinking that if it is so challenging, I mean, it's important that we put things into perspective so they understand, again, why we make those decisions to come here. So I wonder whether you can throw light on that.
Well, I for one, I just from the beginning when I talked about the opportunity that I saw in making our children have a second impact, the way I demonstrated to them, for them to understand, like our uncle here was saying, is that it's important you explain certain things to them for them to understand why this is this and so on. I said to them, I said, even though you're British, you're everything, he said, but don't forget that one day, you never know in this world, something may happen that you may have to run away from this country. If there's another second place that you need to go, let it be Sierra Leone. That's why you need to have a Sierra Leone passport. I think that registered in their mind. So even this, I just came back 2 weeks ago. I was there when my daughter's Sierra Leone passport expired. So she had to send it to somebody to take it to me, and I had to make sure I renewed it. I just brought it. Now, sorry, what was your question again? Sorry.
Well, the question is, if the child will ask, well, if things are so challenging here, so why don't we just go back and settle? Why did you come here?
Okay. For me, there's no simple answer to that question. But my answer is, but for me, that I was born there is nothing that will take away my being Sierra Leone first, just like our uncle would say. And the only way I will demonstrate that Sierra Leone is first is if I have opportunity at least once every 2 years or so, I must go home. So you begin to to create the avenue where you can go and feel at home. So if you have the opportunity, if you have parents or friends or relatives or whatever, that you can join to kind of make another home or improve on the home that you have there. I know this is a big challenge for all of us, but that's the starting point, so that you begin to introduce them gradually to that home now and again, and so on. So the moment that registers in your mind and psyche, nobody will tell you that place is so awful, I don't want to go there again. I mean, I know Sierra Leoneans or many other Africans, some of them over their dead bodies, they don't want to go back to Africa. Honestly, yes. But you have to.
Yeah, I mean, like Mr. Buru said, your country is the first home. And Nigeria first, and Nigeria second, and Nigeria third, and probably British fourth. When I came here for the medical training. When I finished, I had the opportunity to go back as a consultant in Nigeria or stay in the consultant post in the UK. And as my children were 2 years, 3 years, and 5 years, and I told them we're going back to Nigeria. They said no. They said no, they're not good. And I asked them, why don't you want to go back to Nigeria? They gave me their reasons. One, couldn't stand mosquitoes. Mosquitoes. The other one, even though we're living in military quarters, armed robbers still came to our house. Was scared of armed robbers, okay? Well, and the third one wanted like the education here. When I put all through together, I had to make the decision. Am I going back or not? I think we're going to spend some years. 1 year, turned to 2 years, turned to 5 years, turned to 20, turned to 30, turned to 34 years. So the thing is, I didn't just stop. I was going back. I was a medical consultant in the oil producing area, arranging free medical service for over 10 years. 10 every day for 10 years. So at times I was making 10 trips a year to Nigeria, costing me over 40,000 pounds logistic costs. I was doing that. I was taking my children there. So they identify with the country. They see themselves as Nigerian. And while they're here, like I said earlier, all the good things about Nigeria, don't feed them with the not to all the challenging things. Let them see the positive aspect. And as they grow older, they make up their mind. Do I want to make this place my home? Or do I want to make Nigeria my home? But the decision then will be theirs. They look at their priorities, security, good roads, 24-hour electricity, regular jobs, regular salary, regular opportunity, and everything there. So at the end of the day, 9 out of 10 will make Britain successful because of the challenges.
No, I do understand that. I don't think I will go back. Because you're used to this, when you're used to an environment, that's why it's interesting, because if you're so used to where you were living, what you were doing back home, why make the move? It's the same with us. Like, we're used to living, we've got everything that we need, a job and electricity and all that sort of stuff, a car. Then for me to go back and live in this area when there's no electricity, I probably won't do it. So
I'd say it wasn't really a conscious decision to stay. It's just like Dr. B just said, 1 year becomes 2 years. Before it gets dark and it gets brighter, it's another year. It's not getting darker because it gets bright, it's another year, and then the years keep going. For some of us, it happened at the time when I more or less finished doing my course. Then this war broke out and they are struggling. So then you have to find a job. You understand? And initially, go through the system of work permits and all that kind of stuff, and you manage to settle into the job. And then you say, okay, once this thing is over, and the war ended. But then at that point in time, finally for us, we were able to bring the kids before the war started, so they were here, they grew up here. And then it becomes a decision that you don't have to make on your own. And it involves, like Dr. B saying, the wife, the kids, and all that kind of stuff. You can't just make that decision on your own. And I can say categorically that in those early years, our decision was to go back, and we all understood we had to go back. One way I can say that is, came into Bristol, houses around here, we did not even understand the concept of buying, owning a house. Our understanding of buying and owning a house is to buy, build, own for life. Right? We did not understand the idea of a 25-year mortgage. You understand what I mean? They were selling flats here at Maisonette for £20,000, £25,000 in those days. And somebody said, take a mortgage. What am I going to take a debt for? I'm going to Africa. I didn't even understand I could sell it and make a profit.
Exactly.
I did not even know that.
Anytime.
I did not even know that. I just thought when you buy it, you will be in debt and you will pay for 25 years. I'm not going to be here 25 years. That is how ignorant we were in those early days. So even just buying a house, we could have owned houses at that time. People were begging you to buy their homes. Well, you know, I'm not here 25 years. So we were thinking of going back, but it wasn't a conscious decision to stay. But then the years kept going, the kids keep growing up, and then now they have their own voice, they can say what they feel, they can do it. And the wives also got older and older, so you can't just
I think we've got time for one more question, and then we're going to move on to wrapping up.
Sorry, I just want to say hello and thank you for being a great panelist and everyone. I think I just want to, Mr. Sisse's question, I think it's been diverted a little bit. I think he's saying that the children will ask you, my understanding says that if things are so difficult here, like we'll be home and talk it to our children, don't do this, don't do this. And sometimes they ask you this question. If you think that things are difficult, why don't you go back home? This is I think that's my understanding.
They are more difficult.
Yeah, a question coming from our children. For me, being a mother, I always say to them, the reason why we are still tied to this country, I can go back home and go to my farm. I grew up in the village. I tell them that I can go there and survive happily because I'm used to the concept. But the reason why we are here is because of them. We want them to get better life and know that the opportunity they have is better than other people. We've taken them back home. Not everyone is the same. They need to make use of the opportunity that they have and make sure that they utilize it in the right way. Go back home and help their cousins and others that are suffering. So that's my answer to them all the time. You don't know what you get. We don't need to suffer. We are here because of you. Because I can survive anywhere. I'm used to, I can go and cook today. I remember when we had a crisis when they were saying meat, we are running out of meat and chicken. And then the meat shop, they called me Miss Tamba. They said, oh, we got lots of chicken. So I went there, they said, people are fighting for the chicken. We reserved 1 box of chicken. I was laughing. So they said to me, why are you laughing? I said, if you go to my freezer now, I've got smoked fish, I've got everything. So please sell the chicken. So they were laughing. So I always say that to them, we can survive on anything. But our suffering, the paramount thing is because of them. So that's my answer. Yeah.
Can I just say just a few things? Thank you so much. Dr. Sorry, you picked 2 things, and that's really kind of experience, my own experience, from my own experience. How do you manage to get your kids to actually understand culture? How do you manage to get your kids to have cerebral passports? Because I also really, I've experienced so many and so many challenges. I've been here over 32 years, working for NHS since a doctor. But I don't know, how do you feel giving or doing a presentation or hearing a meeting at a time or kind of something projects come within NHS or within your environment where you work? Do you face challenges in there? Because I do. Sometimes I'm not interested or they don't even want me to chair a meeting or do a presentation. So do you find those challenges?
Yes.
And 2, I have a cousin at the time. The kids are okay. She spoke to them in the language, trying to do her best to make sure that they understand. She's my niece anyway, to understand their culture. But she really struggled with her husband. At some point, the kids went to school to say, actually, we don't want to see our parents doing the school run. Why? The priest to ask them was really concerned. The reason is they said, if they come to school, they speak to us in funny language. So And they really struggle. So that's why I'm quite stunned when you said you managed to make sure that they understand their culture, you know where they are. So these are the two things I wanted to ask.
Yeah.
So start.
Very quick.
Yeah, very quick. For the language, start from the beginning. From the beginning, if you start, make sure you speak the language at home. So it's become part and parcel of it. I grew up, even in Nigeria, I grew up, I was born in Abeokuta, Yoruba land. My parents would speak, Ijaw to us would reply in Yoruba, which was a bad thing, and they condone it. So when we speak Ijaw, I just not very fluent to struggle with it. At home, make sure that I'm a pediatrician. I can tell the parent, the first 3 years, speak your language at home to the child. When the child gets to the nursery or school, the child will speak English. In the nursery or school, will pick up the English, but speak your language at home to the child. That's the first one. The second one, I'm very assertive. I've had people who wouldn't accept my leadership style in one way or the other. At the end of the day, when you are very competent, you have no choice. You have no choice. Any of the panels will put you there. Somebody has come to the field to tell me if you understand what I was saying. Put them, go and get an interpreter. To get, I'm the boss. I'm the boss. They say, well, I'm running the thing, I'm in charge. It's a privilege, I know that, but they, among themselves, they won't be happy to see this black man being in charge of the unit. They won't. But always have something extra. When you have nothing extra, there's no way, what you call it, discrimination can survive. Once you have nothing extra.
And I think this is why, this is really for me just to round up. I think this is why Black History Month is a really, really important part of the calendar for the year, because this year's theme was, although it's focused on the Caribbean side of things, the Windrush generation who came in the 50s and 60s. And if you think about the contributions that the Caribbean community have made to the UK when they first came to Britain through working on the buses, working in NHS, for example, and really starting to pave the way for black people. They faced a huge amount of discrimination, racism on a daily basis. They wanted to go back because they said, why do we leave the sun and the sea and, you know, the beautiful country of, you know, whether that's Jamaica, Guyana, Barbados, to come to rainy England, to London, to be spat at and all that sort of stuff as well. And I think back then was racism in your face. It was blatant. They didn't like you because you were black. The racism we see nowadays is very subtle. And that's through the different ways we have to, I guess the different ways that we have to navigate, either through our workplaces, our schooling, education establishments, wherever that might be, even walking down the street. The racism isn't so much in your face, it's quite subtle. And I think that's the worst type of racism, because you don't know it's happening. But the outcome of that subtle racism, you'll feel it 10 times worse. If somebody said to me in my workplace, I don't like you because you're black, I'll be like, I can't change anything for that, you know what I mean? But let's say, for example, I went for an interview for a senior position and I was the only black person, and I heard somebody say something in the kitchen, or he's going to get the job because X, Y, and Z, you know, that will hit 10 times worse because it was so behind the scenes about it. But I think now we're in a society where we are accepted a lot more because of what happened all those generations ago through the Caribbean people coming through over to the UK, and also following that, the African as well. But what I also want to say, just to wrap up, is for us not to forget where we're from, because I think if we forget where we're from, we don't know where we're going moving forward. And I think black people have got a special quality about us that we can achieve absolutely anything when we put our minds to it, because we work and navigate in so many different ways. You know, we've got people here who are, you know, senior engineers within IT and technology. We've got doctors. You know, we've got so many powerful people within our community, even here in Bristol, and the minds that we have, and even some of the younger generations of what they're doing, not just academically, but in sporting, for example, in the performing arts. There's so many different qualities that we have, which we need to really, really push out there to the wider Bristol community. And I think what SLEBA does, and I don't think they do enough of, is actually celebrate the good we have within our community, if that makes sense. The power that we have when we hold together as a Sierra Leone community is second to none. So we're a small nation in Africa, and we're even smaller here in the UK, and even smaller in Bristol. Let's shout about what, in my opinion, let's shout about what we have to offer to the world. Because I think if we do that, game changer. We've got to really, really wrap up before we have some food. We've got a poem to be read by Neko, so please come up and share your poem.
Black history, a moment of profound reflection. Perceive the ordeals of our forefathers, in childhood sold into slavery to lands unknown, deprived of dignity, standing all alone, a life no better than a sheep and a goat. Miraculously, they survived. Envision the effects of slavery on Africa as a whole, robbed of her prized human resources and gold, devastated by wars and hardships untold, a livelihood dependent solely on handouts and dough. Incredulously, they endured. Now comprehend impediments to the African diaspora, traumatized by overt racism and oppression, undeterred in their quest for change of status, aiming for the best of themselves and progeny. Optimistically, they preserved. Black History Month, a time for us to celebrate, to acknowledge our history, culture, and rich heritage, rejoice in our fathers and forefathers' patronage, learn from the past and the future, ours to manipulate, standing proud of the African in our veins. Confidently, we advance, upwards and forward. Your struggle will not be in vain.
So I'd just like to say a big thank you to our panelists, Dr. You. Thank you very much for all of your. So I'm going to hand over to one of the other adults to conduct the rest of the evening, because this is my birthday. So thank you everybody for coming and listening, and hopefully you guys enjoy the rest of your evening with us. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Oh, sorry, yeah, we've got the vote of thanks from Sarah just to do that.
I just want to say a big thank you to everyone for joining us today to celebrate another Black History Month. Big thank you to our guest panelists and all of our panelists for dedicating your time to this event and for sharing your life stories. I also want to say a big thank you to the SLEBA community for the donation that you made towards the youth fundraising. A big thank you as well to the Black History Month Planning Committee. It will not have happened without you guys. Thank you. Thank you.
Cool, and that's it. I think the food will be ready to be served shortly. Hey! Not before your elders, man. Are we off now? Cool. Thank you. I knew you had to leave by 7, so I tried to.